Welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. Here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Now, some of the messages that you have shared, Kweku afloat, says, for me, it is really hard to say whether it is good or not. The previous government brought charges against them, and now the new Attorney General removed it. Are they going according to the law, or it is politically motivated? Atella Kojo Francis, the Attorney General's decision to drop the case against Dr. Dufour and others in exchange for 60% refund shows display of political leniency. If they are not guilty, they should pay nothing. If they are, they should refund 100%. Kweku Bibi Osei says, utterly poor decision which can only be politically motivated. You can't leave members of your own party for such offenses and go after your opponent for less or similar offenses. The AG is a lip service AG who is doing a disservice to the country. JM must sit up. K. Amwa says, if the decision to discontinue the criminal case against Dr. Dufour and others is fair, then the imprisonment of Atuesian is on similar charges is unfair. Sarkodie says, if the Attorney General can drop charges for 60% recovery against Dr. Dufour, then prisoners who have spent 60% of their sentences in prison should be released. Sadly, avenue has been created to loot the country's money. Later pay 60%. 60% or 70% as long as your government is in power. Then Suleimana Isifu says, how do you reconcile the fact that the current Attorney General was a lawyer of Dufour fighting the revocation of his bank license with the current decision of the Nolly prosecutor, albeit with a 60% recovery? Is the AG not conflicted with the 60% recovery? Does it mean, contrary to the accusations, that the banking sector cleanup was a politically motivated actual wrongdoing occurred? Let's build Ghana better than this. The politicians have taken us for granted for far too long. Kwame says, I have serious misgivings about the 60% settlement. In fact, I made posts on social media to that effect. However, following the acquittal of Michael Yineku, the founder of Beige Capital, who was facing 43 counts, I have been wondering if refusing the 60% would have been a smart move. What if the case had proceeded and a not guilty verdict had been reached? I am conflicted or confused, you wanted to say. All right, so I think that I could end this here. Thank you very much. Now, let's see how we deal quickly with the Auditor General's report. That shows a spike in what the Auditor General calls irregularity. Every year they call it irregularity. I don't want to call it that. Misuse and theft. It was 88 billion the last time, and now it's 18 billion, as in 2024 audit. 18 billion. Who is coughing up what? And who is getting a Nolly prosecutor plea bargain to keep 40% in these matters? Remember, when we were going to the IMF, Occupy Ghana, which used to always also audit the Auditor General's report, did a documentary. They did their audit and found 5 years of the auditor's report, monies misused and stolen. If we had recovered them, we would not need to go to IMF, because it was almost 3 times the amount we were going to the IMF for. Yatisikaso. And so let me start with Dr. Odrosai. What do you make of the report and what is in it?
Thank you very much, Samson. And Samson, the report is not good. I should not be happy at all. Especially the 18 billion you indicated is that of only public corporations and statutory institutions. Majority of them who are SOEs. And for it to increase by 109% is something that should not be acceptable. Worst of it is that 84.5% of them are recoverable. And when you drill down the composition of the the irregularities, it includes what they call intergovernmental agency debt. And I ask myself, how come that we cannot have a simple reconciliation forum? For instance, if Ghana Water Company is owing ECG for electricity consumed, ECG is owing Ghana Water Company for water consumed, can't we have a simple reconciliation forum to resolve this issue? How come that it became an audit query issue? And then also, issues about unretired interest. Bottom line is that it is a no-no. And I ask myself these questions every year. What is happening in the system? Before I even left office as Director General Internal Audit Agency, we were pushing for strengthening control systems, strengthening the internal audit systems, strengthening the laws that can help us prevent some of these things. Apart from the public corporations one, we look at that of District Assembly's Common Fund. That has also increased by 317%. Like 2023, it was 49 million. It has now moved to 205 million. Then you look at pre-university educational institutions. That has also increased by 213% from 7 million to 23 million. Now, when you look at these figures, it tells you that there's something fundamentally wrong with our system. This is not the issue of politicians. And I always say that if we want to fight corruption, prevent abuse, misuse, and the loot, we should balance our energies. It is not about the politician. The politician may have a role to play in them, but the technical officers who see themselves as permanent government, no politician signs checks. The politicians give approval, but the checks are signed by the finance officers and the chief directors who manages the system. So I think we have to purge the system.
But Dr. Drosa, it's the politicians who are building a war chest. And so if they will only use these people to get to their destination.
Yes, that's something I agree with you. But at certain times, the politicians have maximum 8 years. But these are people who call themselves permanent government. Every government will come and go. They are there and they teach some of them how to do these things. Bottom line is, let us peg the system. Let us clean the system. The Auditor General said 84% is recoverable. He should be able to tell us how he's going to recover and the recoveries for the previous years. But I think that heads must roll. Every year in, year out, we talk about these things and we leave it. But if we will be able to prosecute people, what happens to the surcharging powers of the Auditor General? The Auditor General has the right to surcharge people and make sure that we get some recoveries. What has happened? So I think the laws are not being implemented well, and they are not biting. So I require.
Is there a problem of the laws or lack of? Is there a problem of the law or lack of implementation of the laws, enforcement?
I think it is lack of willingness to enforce, because if we crack the whip and we get heads rolling, people appear before the Public Accounts Committee. Then after that, Public Accounts Committee will give directives. Public Accounts Committee does not implement their own decisions. Attorney General will take over and nothing happens. I think that it's about time we implement the recommendations to the latter. So,
Doc, we can actually live without the IMF, right? In 2020, the figure was 12.85 billion. In 2021, the figure was 17.48 billion. In 2022, it was 15.6 billion. In 2023, it was 8.79 billion. In 2024, it's 18.41 billion. Do you have an idea what amounts or levels of recovery we have had in the past?
No, I don't. And that is what I want the Auditor General to give to Ghanaians. I know he's done some recoveries, but we will need him to report the consolidated recoveries he's made, especially in this particular report. And Samson, let Ghanaians understand that this 80 billion figure we're talking about is only for the SOEs. There are other irregularities on the MMDAs, DACF, MDAs, pre-university educational institutions, and public universities and colleges of education. So the issue is bigger than we are saying it. But I would expect the Auditor General to, before even putting this report out, indicate the recoveries he's made from previous year's audit. So, for instance, the 2023 audit of the irregularity of 8.7 billion, he should tell us, out of the 8.7 billion, I have been able to recover 5 billion. Then it gives us hope that if you tell us 18.4 billion irregularity, out of which 84% is recoverable, then we know that there is hope for the future.
Domelevo was issuing the surcharges, disallowances, running after people, and even because of that, he suffered. When he ran after Osafo Mafo, he lost his job. This Auditor General is not doing that. How do you expect him to recover anything?
He should be able to do that, and I respect Mr. Domelevo for that. Dan will go the extra mile to save money and chase people to pay. And I respect him for that. And that is what I was doing at IA. I expect the Auditor General not to look left, not to look right, but chase people. And Samson, for if you are a head of an anti-corruption institution, you should be able to do these things. That is why we should take politics out of anti-corruption institutions. As soon as you allow politics to go into the headship and the leadership of anti-corruption institutions, you cripple them and they are not able to function. And I respect Mr. Dan Domelevo for that. He stood on his grounds and he was able to chase. This Auditor General can do same if he wants to. And he started. I would encourage him to do that so that Ghanaians can get the money back. It is no. We should not be seeing these figures and then run to the IMF as if there are no systems. He should be able to recover that. And Samson, there's another one on the whole government account. The whole government account, and let me also tell Ghanaians that the whole government account of the Republic of Ghana has been qualified by the Auditor General. And here is where I have a problem, because his qualification stems from a number of points that the Controller and Accountant General overstated public debt by a certain amount of money. Why should we do that? Why should we find ourselves in this situation? Knowing very well that when you overstate public debt, it has implications on a number of things. And I think we deserve some answers from the Controller and Accountant General and the Auditor General. And even the reason why our public accounts have been qualified is a worry to me. So I think...
What does it mean? What does it mean for an account to be qualified?
It means he has expressed an accept for opinion. When we say it has been qualified, it means it is not, the financial statement does not show a true and fair view of your operations, which means there are some material irregularities in the financial statement, which is not the best. So there are three forms. Either you say it shows true and fair view, or it does not show true and fair view, or you say except for these issues, the financial statement shows true and fair view. And for the whole government accounts of the Republic of Ghana to be qualified, I think Parliament will have to ask questions, and I will invite Honorable Adongo and his team to ask questions about why and how the accounts of the Republic of Ghana will be qualified. There is something fundamentally wrong with the system, and we need to correct it.
All right. Just on a lighter note, anytime Isaac comes to the studio, I try to teach people how to pronounce his name. Doc, his name is Adongo. It's not Adongo.
Okay.
Yeah. It's Adongo, not Adongo.
Let me pronounce it right.
Adongo.
Correct, Adongo.
Thank you.
On
the issue of names, that your social media people, my name is Kujo, not Kwabena.
Yes,
that is not.
Doc, my last question to you will be.
Change my name.
My last question to you will be this, and I suppose you will not be comfortable with me saying this, but you were in the internal audit agency doing a good job, but the system that we run, they come in and then everybody go away, regardless of the work you are doing. Don't you think that you had a role to play to ensure that the auditor does not report this, ginormous, humongous amounts of, thievery within the public sector?
Samson, thank you very much. My previous organization had a role to play because we regulate the public sector internal audit system. And for 5 years that I was in that position, we tried putting systems in place. But we have a challenge. The challenge is the law. The internal audit law of the country was very weak, archaic, and was an obstacle to prevent some of these things from happening. The law was passed in 2003, and nothing has been done about the law. Internal auditors are some of the worst paid officers who are the gatekeepers in this country. And I pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and nothing happened until the present government decided to hound me out of office. But I'm happy that it is in the government's manifesto that they are going to pass the new internal audit service law so that they will be able to strengthen internal audit. If you can prevent something from happening, why do you allow it to happen? So I think that, look, the government must be bold, strengthen internal audit. Hounding me out of office will not solve the problem. Get technical people who will help you to prevent, strengthen the control system, treat the internal auditors well, pay them well, and they will be able to prevent some of these things. Because it is better to prevent than to spend energies and resources to chase after money, some of which you will never even get. So why don't we adopt the preventive approach rather than using a post approach?
All right, thank you very much. And people like you, you don't really need these jobs for anything. Immediately he was removed. The international bodies came for him, just like Dom Level. Immediately he was removed, international bodies came for him. So, yes, Isaac, what is it in this report that grabs your attention and makes you feel we are heading the wrong way if we don't do what exactly?
Well, the truth is that I have never had confidence in the kind of system we are operating.
That's a big statement.
Yes, we are basically pretending to be exercising assurance, but the system that we are operating itself doesn't lend itself to proper assurance.
Kuku Kwarteng says we are running like a Ponzi scheme.
Exactly. So if you ask me, you have an auditor who technically is an employee of the Parliament of Ghana. The Parliament of Ghana is toothless when the auditor reports to him and simply engages in talk show without prosecutorial powers. So technically, you have created an independent
Is
auditor.
it public accounts you are saying talk show?
Public accounts. They cannot go and prosecute anybody. They don't have those powers. And Parliament is the employer of the auditor. So yes, there's independence of the auditor away from the executive, but to what end? That is where the problem is. Look, before these irregularities, if the Auditor General goes to an institution and conducts an audit, during the process, when they find irregularities, they flag them. They give the heads of the agencies the right to explain away those irregularities so that they can be satisfied with the data that they are getting. If they fail, they flag them. Then at the exit, when they are done, we have an exit conference where they will meet you and say, oh, we have come to do this audit, but these are the material things we have found that you have not been able to explain. Please, are you able to explain them to us now so that we'll strike them off? You are not able to explain. So they go away and say, okay, now we have done, we are going to formally document what you have done. So they go and write to you a management letter indicating all the infractions they have found and the impact of those infractions on the set of accounts. You are not able to explain away those matters. They report to your boss. Your boss only calls you to repeat the same conversations you have had at the Public Accounts Committee. You are done, they give you directives, go and implement these recommendations so that you don't sin no more. You go and sleep. The man who will make sure that those recommendations are implemented was Odrose, who is an internal auditor, who has to make sure that he has people on the ground in the various agencies who will take these recommendations and insist that at a minimum, these should be resolved and not be repeated. These are HND holders. And they are dealing with sophisticated engineers, lawyers, and financial controllers. So at the end of the day, they are not able to do anything. The following year, it is repeated on a large scale. I don't know whether you see where I'm going.
Yeah.
It's repeated on a large scale.
It's frightening.
Then the numbers are going up, you know, and then we pretend that we are doing something only to end the cycle and continue. Look, Dr. Daniel Domlevo started something. We need to strengthen all the anti-corruption agencies. You cannot ask somebody who is not an energy expert to understand an energy contract. You cannot find an accountant who doesn't understand structural designs and how those structural designs become quantities that are priced in a contract. And you cannot ask an accountant who understands the legal implications of the terms and conditions of a contract. So these institutions must be served properly with this array of experts who in the course of the audit can say that the implication of all what I'm seeing is this and advise the accountant auditor to then apply his knowledge in assessing what he has been told. That doesn't exist. So when I go to an audit and I start seeing issues, immediately I have to flag those issues and ask the anti-corruption agencies to now send a team to come and assist me on that audit. Because there's a possibility that this audit will end up in a prosecution. So the evidence gathering must start with my work as an auditor. But this person who will prosecute is sitting there. He doesn't know what is happening. And I'm struggling with an audit. I finish the audit. I report. They call them to Public Accounts Committee. Then you send it to the auditor, the Attorney General. He now goes there to go and do what? By which time evidence is tampered. So the evidence gathering should start as part of the audit. And that there must be reforms to ensure that when the audit is ongoing and very serious matters are identified, the Auditor General should begin to work with the agencies that have the power to build a docket. So by the time they report to Parliament, you are already being questioned. They are already sifting through your documents. They are already reviewing your contracts, even before the report comes to Parliament. Sometimes the reports come to Parliament and you are beginning to deal with a Public Accounts Committee 3 years or 2 years before. Who does that? So we need to set up and undertake a proper reform to ensure that the ultimate of the audit is that there is a possibility that this will lead to a prosecution, and that the agencies that would have to take over from my work are already in the boat, also gathering their data. If there's nothing happening, I'm not flagging anything serious, we don't need them.
Okay.
But those instances where we need them, for instance, if you are talking about redemption of interest.
Yeah, interest. That's not retired.
I mean,
that's part of what he says is recoverable.
Yeah, so
even rocket science. And some of these are to who? Your own employees.
I'm traveling. I've been given money to go and pay for accommodation, transport, and all of that. I come back, and for a whole year, I've even lost memory of what I did there. It is equivalent to not even attending the program or incurring the cost. That's what it means. And those are not about an auditor. It's about the institutions itself and its compliance. Right. When you prepare the accounts at the end of the month and you pull out staff impress accounts, don't you get worried that the period that this activity was supposed to happen has elapsed, and ask questions why you are still keeping the money? And you are waiting for an auditor to come a year later to validate that.
Even though payroll-related issues decrease significantly, as we have seen in the 2024 audit. Don't you think something should be done to kill this incentive for bloating employee numbers? Because there is always the validation that is done.
Yes.
And it is the heads of the institutions. If it's a school, it's the head teacher or headmaster somewhere. If they are being prosecuted, if they become the target of prosecution, don't you think this will reduce?
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm saying is that there is no deterrent. Because it's a cycle. I just have to play within the cycle for another cycle to begin. Then they will turn their attention to the new cycle. Okay, and nobody comes back to what I did in the past. And if I can manage this cycle also, I move to the next.
Right. So
we need to be very serious with the way we implement these systems.
Right.
And people must be held accountable. To be honest with you, when I was being trained, I was told that trust is good, but control is better.
All right.
If somebody is controlled, it doesn't mean he doesn't trust you. But he himself doesn't trust himself, let alone to trust you. So he has to make sure that things
in teaching the law of evidence, we will be told that even if it is told, you are told that it is signed by the Pope. Verify.
Exactly.
Now, yes, like I said, very easy ways to catch those who are responsible for the ghosts rather than going after the ghosts.
The ghosts, yeah.
We don't do that. So we always payroll is ballooned and somebody is sitting somewhere, somebody is dead, they don't report it, and they still, draw that money. Why do you think that it is such a big problem that the auditor says 15.57 billion of the 18.4 billion Ghana cedis that has been flagged is recoverable? And these are in the areas of unpaid taxes, locked up investment, outstanding loans to employees, interagency debt, and unretired interests. Why is it difficult to get these back when these are the things that are bleeding our economy?
Well, Samson, let me read Psalm 89, 31, 33. It says, if they violate my statutes and do not keep my commandments, then I will punish their transgressions with the rod and their iniquities with strips. But I will not remove my steadfast love or be false to my faithfulness. What does that mean? You see, one of the things that we have stopped doing in this country is punishment. And I keep saying it that, look, the foundation of this country is being eroded gradually because the new generation sees nothing wrong with wrongdoing. You do it, look, I employ a lot. And after a few times, people come to you to help people to get jobs. You know what they tell you? Oh, get us government jobs for that 1 year. Everybody knows that the only place that it doesn't matter what you do, you still keep your job to retirement is government jobs. Appraisals, no. Even if there's an appraisal, it is not based on, the state-owned enterprises and all these companies, it is not based on anything. So you are looking at impresses, as my honorable member said, right? These are things, and you see, by the time we are hearing about it at the Public Accounts Committee, as he said, there has been a management letter that had gone, the exit meeting that was done with the internal auditors, the external auditors with the internal auditors. But the fundamental issue is who is in charge of these internal audits. And my brother said something, H&D holders, how are they paid? Remuneration. Former Director General said that they are the worst remunerated. Look at the numbers we are talking about, Samson. If we are to now say that in most private companies in the organogram, internal auditor report directly to the board, right? You are not part of. So management, your report don't even go to the managing director. It goes directly to the board. The board chairman receives it, and the board now deliberates on. The reason being that there could be infractions which the managing director himself is probably part of. So the internal auditor report directly to the board. The problem, and I'm happy my brother, who is the chairman of the finance committee, is saying these things. You guys have supermajority. Don't use it to hound and tease. Do something with it. Because all the reforms you are talking about, all these 2/3 you guys talking about in parliament that you have, These are the brilliant things that we expect the NDC to propagate and amend the laws and make sure it happens.
Respond to you.
No, don't. There's no point. You are the chairman. You've said all the good things that you think should happen. You have the majority in parliament to do them.
Are working on the constitution.
No, the constitution is one thing. But I'm saying that they are set because you made a very interesting point, which is the parliament is the employer of the auditor.
Yes.
The auditor brings its report, but there is no bite at both ends. There's no bite at Public Accounts Committee. There's no bite at the internal auditor. So there need to be a bite. And to amend those laws, you don't need constitution amendment to amend those things.
No, you need that.
Well, you guys are comfortable with
for the Auditor General, you need the constitution to be amended.
But can't you amend the act that established the Auditor General?
There's an saying that the Auditor General draws his powers from the Constitution.
So you need to amend those.
You need to amend.
So hopefully when that happens. But something to a larger point.
Provided you will not also scream that we are going to give a third term to somebody.
Well, I don't even know why that's even a conversation. I mean, something, you're a lawyer and clearly there is a very stringent, and when people keep coming to me and say third term, I say, what third term? Let's go and do a referendum today. I mean, if you want to spend 2 years of your administration doing a referendum about you wanting a third term, let's go out there and do a referendum. Well, that's fine.
But your people are propagating it, you know.
No, listen, let me tell you something. If that conversation ever comes up, I'm 100% convinced, and I'm probably been assured that the NDC themselves will fund us to oppose it. People who are losing their boots, the Greek ministers and the chief of staffs and the party chairman who are losing their boot to fight for the NDC flag bearer, you think they will allow His Excellency John
Mahama? Will fund you.
Well, that's fine, but you guys, but your people want it more. Because they know that.
Okay, no, so you go.
Well, there you go. Let's not transgress.
At the just ended election rerun, Abu Jinapo is a lawyer.
Okay.
He was in one of the places campaigning. Did you hear what he said? They are seeking a two-thirds majority in parliament to change the constitution and make John Mahama president a third time.
No, but we all know. We all know that's not how the law works.
That's what you guys do.
No, but that's fine. But we all know it is for the facts of how it will happen. It's clearly defined in the Constitution. We all know what will transpire before that can happen. So let's not.
So talk to your supporters.
Well, that's fine. I mean, that conversation, I don't think.
There's a lot of gaslighting. Some of it born out of ignorance. Some of it also deliberate, particularly on social media.
Yeah. I know the bloggers are on it, but like I said, look. Yeah. But the most important thing on this internal audit issue is that we need to have a bite. We need to have punitive actions. We need to have instances where the low-hanging fruit, those that can be gotten back immediately. Like my brother said, you don't even have to come to PAC before the prosecution starts. At the time when they are doing the exit, because, audits are done a year after, right? So by the time the auditor is having the exit committee and the infractions are there, he can actually refer it to the Attorney General for further investigation before Public Accounts Committee. So those are the things we need to, because every year or year, it keeps increasing. Unfortunately, this year, my sector, my beloved ECG, seems to have a brunt of most of them, and they said about 84% of the coming from ECG as a state-owned enterprise. Yeah. So it's really unfortunate, but I think something needs to be done mostly on the punitive actions that happens.
You started on a biblical note, very inspirational, and then you made a very profound statement, which is fact, that the foundations of this country are being eroded, and that people defend wrongdoing. Don't you think you, the political class, are largely responsible for this? And I'm saying this because when the law enforcement, EOCO, police, CID, OSP, they arrest an important figure, politically exposed person. When they catch the small thieves, nobody cries. They arrest them and they charge them. You shout political witch hunt. You mobilize your supporters to go and, mass up at their offices. When a court convicts them, you single out the judge. You bastardize them. Do you think we can correct this erosion if this continues, where people don't even know the person from anywhere, but because he belongs to NDC or MPP, they do no wrong. Once they get accused, they are defending them like nobody's business.
I know. And Samson, let me say this. A good sword should cut both ways, right? I have always said, and it's profound you said that. I think last week there was a day that I was in a meeting where I was discussing with some communicators that why do you go and defend someone, quote unquote, alleged to have done something? Why is the party defending that person? Because I think the party communication, I've been on TV and said this, and I've been bashed for it. I've always said that party communication has no business defending political infringements. Sorry, government infringement, not political. Okay. The party communicators have no business defending government infringement. So if somebody in the government have done something, let the person go through the process and be acquitted. But the problem where I said a good source should cut both ways is that the process these people are taking them through, like you just use our brother Wuntumi's instance, the kind of bail that was set for him. And you're a lawyer. I'm sure we all found problems with the bail conditions that were set. He is only an inquiry. An inquiry bail should not be that stringent. So the political inference which goes into those things also becomes a problem. Because if you think, and almost at times, this is what happens. Political appointees who are given to these Yoko and all these, they just want the front pages of the arrest, not the prosecution. Because if you really want the prosecution, the arrest is really a because you arrest me today, within 48 hours, you have to arrange me. You put me on the hard floor. I will lie there quietly, eat some gari or whatever. 48 hours, I've not killed, I've not done drugs. I'm on bail. But then you now come and put certain bail conditions that makes it very difficult to meet. Okay. That is where the political witch hunt comes in, because it is not that you are giving me a fair trial, but you are putting impediments in my way for a fair trial.
We need more of your kind in the communication front. See, my major issue is, why can't we collect these monies? And he says 15% plus, 15 million billion plus. Is recoverable. But who is going to recover it? And you can tell from the trajectory over the years, if we're collecting even a quarter of these monies, we don't need any Bretton Woods institution to come here and hand out to us. So we really are not poor.
Yes, you're right. And about 15.5 billion is recoverable. And so why are we not recovering them? You should ask yourself, what caused these infractions or irregularities? So according to the Auditor General, we have issues around procurement. Someone said we are running procurement economy. So before a
procurement is a synonym for corruption.
Yes. So if you are running a procurement process where the exception to the rule, that is single sourcing, becomes the norm, you would have some of the problems that we are having. Secondly, we are procuring without doing adequate value for money assessment on the projects that we are procuring. You would have these issues. And then last is not strictly enforcing the laws. So Honorable mentioned that yes, there are instances we need to amend the Constitution, review the Constitution, but we have enough laws to enforce. The Public Financial Management Act we passed in 2016 empowers us to enforce sanctions such as surcharges. So the people who are keeping these impress, what are we doing with them? Are they still in employment? Why can't we surcharge them? Are we still paying their salaries? So some of these things that are happening in the private sector, the person cannot keep impress for more than 1 month. He will account for it as soon as he returns from the trip.
Correct.
Somebody is keeping that impress for 1 year. So it means that we are not enforcing the law that we have passed. So the Public Financial Management Act we passed in 2016, and we further amended it in 2025 to enforce or bring stricter laws in instances where the Minister of Finance can be censured. Why are we not enforcing the laws? So we should enforce the laws, and I think we should look at it broadly. That I said that we have the Public Financial Management Act. The Act is supposed to ensure that we are properly budgeting for the expenses we are incurring. We are committing government to things that have been properly budgeted for. And so in certain areas, the first one is that the Public Financial Management Act enjoins us to establish an independent fiscal council. The problem we have in the last few months, as you know, or historically, is the fact that fiscal policy is not speaking to monetary policy. And so if you have an independent fiscal council, you have instance where fiscal policy is speaking to monetary policy. In the last 6 months, we've seen that happen, and we've seen the effect of that. So you have a situation where the fiscal side is overspending and monetary policy is increasing the rate. That's counterproductive. So if the two are speaking together, there is stringent and monitoring of expenditure on the fiscal side, and the monetary policy rate is up, and you are mopping up excess liquidity from the market. So that's the first one. The second one is that we are setting rules around budget deficits. Honorable, we passed the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which is supposed to limit our budget deficit to 5%. What happened? We have an escape clause in that act. And that escape clause was that in certain situations, we will suspend that cap. We suspended it when we were hit by COVID. And up to date, we have not enforced that. The reason why we are still under 5% in terms of our fiscal deficit is because I know that it's because the IMF is in town. We will have the vicious cycle of overspend in election years, by which time you would have exited the IMF program. So if you don't check the clause in that Fiscal Responsibility Act and ensure that the minister is enforcing that act, you always overspend in election years.
I should give you some information.
Yes.
If you look at the 2025 budget, we made some amendments to the Public Financial Management Act to incorporate and revive the fiscal responsibility. So it is now in the law.
Yes.
And because of that, the fiscal targets are being informed by that law. I just wanted to give that.
Excellent. So that's really helpful. Yeah. So that we operate under the 5%. Otherwise, you continue to overspend in election years, and you will come back to the same vicious cycle that we have been dealing with. And debt ceiling. Today, our debt to GDP ratio is under 44%. Maybe after IMF, where would you go again? So the PFM Act, that's the Public Financial Management Act, limits us that by 2034, we should have a debt to GDP ratio of 45%. So today we have even achieved that, something that we are supposed to achieve in 2024. So it means that when the headmaster is in the room, we are very much disciplined in the way we do things, but we overspend. And then commitment by agencies. We have instances where agencies and heads of department are committing government to certain procurement where these procurement activities are not budgeted for. And so heads of institutions who are enjoined by this act have to face sanctions, including imprisonment, ministers of state and heads of covered agencies. We have to ensure that that's happening. And then the last one is maybe sinking fund. The Public Financial Management Act enjoins us to fund the sinking fund account. Let me give you an idea of what's happening. So in 2025, this July, we have paid external debt of $350 million, approximately. In 2026, we have debt to service of 20 billion Ghana cedis. 2027, based on a restructuring, a debt to pay in 2027 of 50 billion Ghana cedis. And 2028, a debt to service of 45.7 billion Ghana cedis. If you don't fund the sinking fund account per the Public Financial Management Act, we will have situations where creditors are chasing us at the ministries, or external creditors are defaulting on our external debts because you have not funded the sinking fund account.
Let's check how all of this reflects on the mid-year budget. It looks like this government is left to do magic because of the constraints that they face in the, kitty. I'm going to Professor Bochi to take my final comments on the Auditor General's report, and one message that has come in from Eddie. He says he sends me a story of a security guard who was sentenced 15 years for iPhone theft. And he says 15 years for attempt, but someone walks with 2 billion on our conscience for years to come. Prof. Abuchi, we have recounted this over and again. I remember having a conversation with you, and you want to look at the thing Africa-wide, how we have such a populous, energetic, as it were, workforce. And yet, we see our leaders running to China, cap in hand, and all of these things. Auditor General's report, they've just become reports. When they were issuing them without issuing surcharges and disallowances, it took Occupy Ghana to go to the Supreme Court, for the Supreme Court to tell the Auditor General that in the Constitution you are empowered to issue disallowances and surcharges before they started issuing it. Even the rules for that, it took Occupy Ghana to work on the rules to be used in the courts. And we are here, we are not issuing the surcharges and disallowances. And the Auditor General says his recommendations should be complied with. If we do that, then we'll recover 15.57 billion.
Yes, Samson, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay, so, you hear these figures and we have become sort of numb to them. We have normalized corruption, we have normalized scandals, we have normalized thefts. It's become so normal when you repeat and repeat them over and over again and nothing happens. What we are doing and what we have done is to mainstream corruption to a point where it has become virtually legitimized. Maybe the word corruption itself, and may have to be looked at, because from a psychological standpoint, it seems to have gained a certain legitimate currency. That if someone calls someone corrupt, it's not a really big deal. The word stealing and the word theft still are pretty much unacceptable, and so I wouldn't want anyone to call to say to my son or daughter, your father is a thief. I wouldn't want that. But I wonder if someone says to my son or daughter, your father is corrupt. I believe I'm not corrupt, but I wonder if I would want to spend my money chasing after that person for compensation by way of defamation. So I think words matter. I remember many years ago when female circumcision used to be called female circumcision. It wasn't working until the name was converted by the UN, female circumcision, to female genital mutilation. And then suddenly the practice ceased. So perhaps we want to look at that in terms of the nomenclature that we attach to the name.
That's why here on Newsfile, we decided not to call it irregularities, but misuse and theft. And the procurement part, we know that procurement is just a pseudonym for corruption, stealing.
Correct. I think names matter. And, kudos to multimedia for starting the campaign in terms of the proper use of words to create an impact and for people to change. As the World Bank estimated many years ago, more than 10 years ago, that Ghana loses an amount of $3 billion every year to corruption. More than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
My conservative estimation is that perhaps we're in the bracket of 4.5 billion now. So we're losing all these sums, and then we are with the IMF for a program that stays in the hand of government from undertaking certain social policies that takes care of vulnerable people in our society. So we have major problems, and we don't seem to, address the fundamental problems that actually undermine us as a country. Now, I just want to make one point because my colleagues have spoken to that. One point, and I hope that point addresses this. Our laws still have the law on causing financial loss to the state. Now, I would like to respectfully remind us the reason that law was passed, among others, was to rectify a certain procedural difficulty in the regular criminal code or regular criminal act. And that procedural difficulty is meeting the high threshold of establishing intent when you are making a claim of theft. And so if you are bringing a claim of stealing against someone, you'll have to establish that a person dishonestly appropriated something to himself and to his benefit. In respect to the law on causing financial loss to the state, you don't have to establish any such thing. Once we can show that your conduct has resulted in a loss to the state and that you acted willfully, willfully doesn't mean with a deliberate intent to do something, but you acted with discretion. You acted voluntarily. Once you acted willfully and your action or conduct has resulted in a loss to the state, you have acted in a manner that has caused financial loss to the state. All these irregularities we speak about, all these thefts that we speak about, the question is whether the persons involved acted willfully and therefore whether they were exercising the authority of their office. I think that we have to begin taking action on these things. Otherwise, we are creating perverse incentives for people to indulge in things, knowing that these things pay and that there's a benefit, and the benefits do not come with consequences. I think humans are rational. The economists tell us humans are rational. They calculate their odds. If the odds of doing something is fundamentally in my favor, if I do the cost-benefit analysis, and it balances on the side of benefits, I am incentivized to act in a certain direction. If it balances on the side of a loss, I will have to calculate my odds carefully before I undertake a particular transaction or before I act in a certain direction. I think that we've gotten to that point where increasingly every year people have come to that conclusion that the most that they will suffer is a degree of public opprobrium when they appear before the Public Accounts Committee, and then they speak to all kinds of things that shock the conscience of the country. The panel at the Public Accounts Committee will express their disdain and unhappiness. The whole country will complain perhaps for a week or two, and then we move on. And so people have come to realize that there are no consequences. And the most you're going to have to suffer is to deal with the public perception, which at most is probably going to last for just a week or two. And people are beginning to calculate their odds. And in balancing the odds, they've come to a conclusion that it makes a lot more sense to indulge in what you're going to indulge in and to become perhaps rich for a long time to come and pay a next to nothing price. It makes all the sense for you to do that. As I indicated, it surprises me, for example, in the case of the World Bank and even the IMF, the fact that the World Bank estimated that we lose more than $3 billion per annum, which, as I've indicated, is more than 10 years ago. Perhaps we're in about 5 billion, as of now, 4.55 billion. They've indicated we lose all these, but somehow they have, in some ways, still not invested heavily in closing some of these gaps, but would rather take us through programs from time to time, which also then optimize our debt portfolio with them. And in the end, they are still commercial entities. They make sure that we pay. I mean, nothing given us is for free. We have to pay because they have to respond to their shareholders. So it's important that we come to that conclusion that there are tools and rules here. We just have to implement them.
Thank you. My final question to you, from the perspective you are coming from, action, enforcement, is this: that over the years, these reports are sent to Attorney General, they are sent to IOCO. They kept saying, let's set up a specialized court. The Chief Justice set up about 12 courts so many years ago, and they were still complaining. Even members of Parliament on the Public Accounts Committee still did not even know of the existence of this, and they were still complaining at a time when these courts has already been set up. Do you think that perhaps the Auditor General should now begin to send these reports to the Office of Special Prosecutor rather than AG and the IOCO, where we know there is some complicity sometimes because of the parties that are involved? After all, OSP is now the focal anti-corruption institution we have set up.
Well, indeed, I totally agree with you. The OSP is a specialized body, however, and we'll just have to look at the Act. It has a threshold jurisdiction on some of these cases. But once it meets the threshold, and the figures you're mentioning clearly go beyond the threshold in some ways of the OSP. So yes, I certainly do agree. But the problems at the OSP are not different from the problems at the Attorney General's Department, and would have to address these problems cross-institutionally, because it's a combination of things which include capacity. Look, the truth of the matter is this: persons who indulge in corruption are often persons of means. That means these are people who can also afford the best of legal services. And the truth of the matter is that legal practice in Ghana survives not only on the strength of people's cases, but it survives on the ability of lawyers to exploit the system in ways that advantages their client. And often these are through delays. So delays and frustrations, and very quickly cases die down. So for example, the difficulties of securing witnesses, forensic and auditing capabilities of the office involved, the ability to undertake proper discoveries and be able to garner the requisite evidence before a court of law in a way that will adequately convince the court. And above all that, to overcome that big difficulty of one single reasonable doubt thrown at the case by the defense. So it becomes so difficult very often to prosecute these cases when one is dealing with perhaps poorly or underpaid legal attorneys at the Attorney General's Department or the Office of the Special Prosecutor, who are going up against very well-paid and highly motivated private attorneys who are defending. So the private attorney is well-paid, and he also has a lower threshold job, just to throw in one doubt. The public attorney is probably underpaid and probably under-resourced and doesn't have the requisite complement of auditing and forensic capabilities in conducting the case, and is also having to meet up a very high threshold of proof before. So sometimes you have these imbalances, and they tend to undermine the cases of the states. And when you have acquittals, then our spirit is further dampened, the extent to which we want to further pursue these cases are diminished.
Thank you,
But
Professor.
we'll have to invest in this if we have to make progress against this moving forward.
Thank you, Professor Bochi. We'll take a break here. A message by Kofi Bentil says, reason for our graft is a culture of perverted mercy. When people have to be punished, we invoke this perverted mercy and let them off. Even chiefs beg for them. Unfortunately, lamentations today are a repeat of our annual ritual since independence. It won't change unless we change. Let me show you how this will stop. Let's decide that if an infraction happens, the head of that unit or institution will be fired and prosecuted as a first step. If he defends himself successfully, he will be reinstated with back pay. Kofi Bentil, the rebel. Thank you all very much. My guest, Isaac Adongo, is MP Burgos Central, Chairman of the Finance Committee of Parliament. Kojo Poku is Executive Director, Institute for Energy Policies and Research. He's a member of the MPP Communication Team. He doesn't fight for time, he doesn't shout, but he makes his points. Dr. Eric Oduro-Osai is Chartered Accountant. He's a lawyer. He's a former Director General of the Internal Audit Agency. Yao Apia-Late is Partner, Strategy and Transactions, Africa Infrastructure and Capital Projects Leader, Deloitte Africa. And Professor Kofi Abochi is Dean of the UPSA Law School. We'll be right back with Isaac Adongo's forte, the budget.